Our next interviewee is a man who I respect and one who I've been watching very closely. This is a man whose name rings loud throughout the community and one who is very down to earth. He has connections, he's very plugged in, but most importantly, he's plugged into the streets. And when you say taking news to the streets, you cannot take the news to the streets without having people who are on the front lines. And this man has been on the front lines for a long, long time. And he's going to talk to us about his work on the front lines and the experiences that got him there. Let's welcome Mr. Tony Lewis Jr., everyone. You know, Mr. Lewis, once again, thanks for being here tonight. And if you can, just for the audience, because you wear a lot of hats, you do a lot of things. If you can just first tell us specifically what it is that you do, and after that, just talk about your latest endeavor.
Okay. First of all, good evening, everyone. Yeah, happy to be here. I've been here for a while, man. You should have had me a little earlier, man. The young lady was amazing. She got a little Adele thing going on. Is that her?
Yeah, she's
right. Great job, man. Yeah, right. So my name is Tony Lewis, and I guess some would call me a community activist or what have you. I kind of specialize in ex-offender reentry, so helping individuals formerly incarcerated kind of get back on their feet. You know, we talk a lot about mindset change and getting them employment and things of that nature. Also, I mentor kids with incarcerated parents. I started an initiative called Sons of Life. And then also just kind of using my connectivity and influence to support anything Washington, anything positive. So I started a movement called DC or Nothing in like 2010. It kind of morphed into a real movement that was centered around community engagement and doing events like turkey drives and toy drives and feeding the homeless and raising awareness for different causes.
So what has been the community reaction to that? And you know, before you even answer that question, let's give Mr. Lewis a hand, because that sounds like quite a lot. He's hitting the problem from all points. You're talking about re-entry, returning citizens, and you're talking about feeding the people and actually being with them. What's the reaction been in your years of work?
Yeah, I've always got a ton of support. I think, you know, I've built up a lot of equity in the community. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, you know, since I was 20 years old. You know what I mean? I'm 35, so so much of my work went unseen for years. You know what I mean? Because I feel like in what I do, your work is supposed to go unseen. The people see it. You know what I mean? It just so happened that through the years, my platform grew. I was working in so many different facets and working with so many people, and people knew how genuine I am and I was. At the same time, I'm them. I'm the people I help. So many people I help, I grew up under them or with them or watched them grow up. So I'm not a stranger. Even before I started doing it as a job, you know, I come from a family that I guess you would call it a crime family. Mm-hmm. And so in a community that was impoverished, and we didn't always have a lot, but at some points we had a ton, right? And I was raised to share. And so from the beginning of my life, I've always been in a position to give, and I was always taught to give and help. So so really what I do today is really no different than who I always been. I guess that's why I'm good at it. You know what I'm saying, or whatever, just because I'm just kind of just being who I am.
That's beautiful. That's very beautiful.
R.I.P. Polo.
R.I.P. Polo, TCB. And brother, this is a live taping. This is a live taping, brother. We have to keep it moving. I appreciate that. But Mr. Lewis, and I keep calling you Mr. Lewis because you have so many stripes, man. Like you can't even call you Tony. That's disrespectfful. But you know, you talk about that you are the people, you're on the ground, it never changed. Not a lot of people might not know what you're talking about. If you can just let us know your inspiration, the circumstances of your life that inspired you to go back into your community and help change it.
Sure. Well, I come from Hanover Place, you know, born and raised on Hanover Place. That's in Northwest. If anybody know, like New York Avenue and North Capitol, my street like the next block over. And it's really the epicenter of the cocaine trade in Washington, like in the early 80s, even pre-crack, you know what I'm saying? And so some of the most influential drug dealers in the history of the city came from our block. You know, Cornell Jones, my father, Tony Lewis, you know what I mean? And my father went to jail in '89, alleged partner of Rayful Edmond. Rayful was not from our block, but you know, another very influential person in the underworld. So I grew up, that's what I come from, you know? And then after my father went to prison, you know, in terms of my formative years in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, my neighborhood became much more violent, much more in the years that I grew up in. So I grew up, obviously, you know, losing friends super early, you know what I'm saying? Having my life, you know, being attempts on my life early, you know, that kind of thing. All the while, you know, going through a whole ton of other stuff. You know, my father going to prison really kind of, it crumbled my mom. So we talking about trauma and mental health, you know what I mean? My mother's schizophrenic, and seeing her going back and forth over St. Elizabeth and things like that. And, you know, me going to Gonzaga College High School, all in the mix of, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm a Gonzaga graduate. And so all those things, and I didn't go back to my community. I never left my community. I live 39 Hanover Place right now. You know what I'm saying? I did it. I never went, you know what I'm saying? I went to college, I graduated Gonzaga, but college was never a thing that I wanted to do. I never saw that. But I wound up going to UDC like a year after I finished high school. And I graduated from UDC in '03. And I only say that to say that I did what I did. I'm very proud to say that I became who I became, where I came from. I ain't come back.
Not a lot of people say. Yeah. Not a lot of people, you know, can say they did that. You know, a lot of us are encouraged to leave the confines of our home.
Sure. I actually encourage it though. Yeah. In terms of, that's one of, I don't want to use, I think regret is too strong of a word, but I do wish I would have went away to school. I think the beauty of college, and not just from an educational standpoint, but it's that ability to meet people from all over the world. You know what I'm saying? Not to take nothing away from UDC, but UDC was heavily inundated with people returning to school. It wasn't people my age. But the value in that, though, is that those sisters that had 3 or 4 kids and, you know, had got into the government through, like, stay in school, they gave me direct knowledge of why I needed to get my degree, right? They made it make sense to me. Like, I just trained my boss. I'm 40, my boss is 25, and I just trained her, but now she's gonna be my boss because they didn't have a degree. So it kind of gave me some added motivation, you know, and I appreciate them for that, you know. And like I said, I don't have any regrets in my life. Things happened the way it happened. If it didn't go that way, then I wouldn't be who I am, you know what I'm saying? So
that's wonderful. How were you able to graduate Gonzaga, even with the situations you encountered during your years?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I think I wrote this book to try to chart that. I still didn't.
Yeah.
Right? It was, I think, God's grace, though, to be honest with you, man. And, you know, one of the things I kind of try to avoid, I think we live in a society, especially when you talk about, you know, mainstream media and music and things of that nature, where some of our experiences have been, you know, got to the point where it's been exploited and trivialized. So when I say, oh, I grew up in a bad neighborhood and everybody around me went to jail and everybody died, it's like, but they did. You know what I'm saying? So my mother went crazy. It happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think I want people to understand what that really means and how improbable it makes me, right? And going through Gonzaga with a total culture shock, you know, I mean, not just race, but class as well. And then Gonzaga is just difficult. I don't care where you from. It was guys in Potomac slitting their wrists because it wasn't working out. Like, it's difficult. They breed competition, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I mean, that guy, he may not have been failing, but he wasn't getting the grades to get into Harvard, and not getting into Harvard was the end of the world for him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Understood.
And so anyway, I survived that. Like, I couldn't go home and get no help with my homework.
Yeah.
You know, and but somehow, some way, I mean, again, my mother and my father, you know, my parents, early on, they instilled some real values in me, and doing well in school, and never quitting, and having faith in yourself and having faith in God was some of those things. And really, my grandmother, thank God for her, But all she had to do was kind of cultivate that, and it carried me, man. You know what I'm saying?
That's wonderful, and you talk about that in your book a lot. Slugg is slated for July 31st release.
Sure.
And Tony has, Mr. Lewis, I'm sorry, you have always been an open book pretty much. And, you know, of course everyone knows this, and in taking your message to the streets, you've been very transparent. And this probably is the most transparent you've been, because in addition to telling your story, you're, like you said, you're sort of analyzing what happened and
Sure.
why it happened and how it made you.
Sure.
If you can, just for the audience, reflect on perhaps one of the most memorable parts of the book, something that struck you, maybe something that made you quiver as you wrote it. You know?
Yeah. Oh man, it's several of those moments. I think one is when I'm the only child, right? And so my little cousin Alan, he and I were raised like brothers, you know. He was 3 years younger than me, and he got killed in 2008. And that whole day we were together. He went on ran some errands with me. I took off work, and so anyway, I'm just revisiting the night I got the call, like right after it happened or whatever. And you know, you in the book you experience my reaction to or a lot of people close to me dying, but this particular thing was at a point 2008. I'm a professional, I'm working in my life, I'm thinking like, okay, boom, everything is cool, you know, we done kind of made it, you know. And then he died, and because I'm getting in front of rooms every day telling people, you know, they got to break old habits, they got to really commit to being positive. And then this happens, which puts all that into question. Because where I come from, you do something like that to somebody close to me, is a reaction that needs to happen. And it was a real challenge. Of, you know, it was a real, like, I mean, I don't know. I looked at it as like a test from the Almighty. Like, are you serious? Like, are you serious about what you're doing? And are you serious about, you know, what you trying to be, you know what I'm saying? And you know, a piece of me left with him because we were that close, you know what I mean? And then and so that's one. And then one of the other major moments for me is in the book, and I don't want to give it away, but like one of the things in 2011, right after I won the Hoodie Award. I went to United States Penitentiary in Allenwood to see my uncle. Well, it was interesting because I had two uncles, a cousin, and then one of my best friends, his uncle. They were all in this United States Penitentiary, right? All of them doing life without parole. And we called, my grandmother was there, my uncles were there, my cousin. We called everybody out. So we all in the visiting hall. Yeah. Like a family reunion in a federal penitentiary. Yeah. So for me, you know, the title of the book is Slugg, A Boy's Life in the Age of Mass Incarceration. And we hear about how many people are incarcerated, 2 million people, the most incarcerated place. We got more people incarcerated than any place on earth and all that. But that is mass incarceration. Yes. You understand? That's it. That you know what I mean? That's a microcosm. That's mass incarceration.
And it sounds like it's beyond the numbers, because people, they talk about the numbers and they talk about policy, but what you're experiencing is real, pretty much, what it sounds like.
Sure. And then my uncle would commit suicide January 1st, 2012. Oh. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we went to see him in that was like November. Right. Right, like right before Thanksgiving. So less than 60 days after that, he hung himself. You know what I mean? Right. So, yeah.
What do you... The young men and women who are reading this, you know, I'm pretty sure that most of this stuff resonates with them. They're experiencing it every day, and they feel like they have no escape. But they see you, they respect you. What's your ultimate goal in all of this? What do you want for those readers to get when they take this up? Because I'm pretty sure if they haven't picked up anything, they're going to pick that up. We take our young people for granted all the time, but they're going to pick that up just off the strength that you're you. What do you want them to get from this book?
Yeah, I definitely want them to read things, and a lot of times we're going through problems and scenarios and we think we the only ones going through it. I want them to read and say, damn, Tony went through that too. There's instructions in this book about sound decision making, the power of education, the power, the courage necessary to step away from the crowd when things they doing things you ain't really with. I want kids to be able, if they have an incarcerated parent, to understand that there is some value in that parent. You can, even if it's not just an example of what not to do. I want those children to feel like anything is possible just by reading my story, understand what I was able to navigate through, that they can do the same, do more. You know what I mean? I really wrote every sentence in this book is written towards a kid in Berry Farms or Lincoln Heights or Hanover or First and I wrote it to them. That's who I'm talking to. But at the same time, I think people on the other side of the aisle can get a great deal out of it. It's really a human story. And one of the things, it's quite literary. I mean, I'm biased as hell, right? But the reality of it is, I wrote a book that I felt like could be used and taught at Yale or Harvard. The publishing world just felt like, it was crazy the rejections I got, right? Because they were like total praise, but I'm not famous, right, to them, So in the shrinking book world, I guess they felt like the book couldn't sell, or maybe they don't want to tell this story.
Exactly, and I wanted to ask you about that.
I want to tell this
We obviously know about mass incarceration, and we know about the war, the so-called war on drugs. For those who aren't who aren't aware, President Obama is about to free. He's going to sign a document that's going to free a few drug offenders or so. Obviously, that's to me at least. I'm going to be candid. That's not enough because there are a lot more of those. And there are people, of course, just beyond their own circumstance. They did sell the product, but it's for reasons that were beyond their control, pretty much. And there are a whole lot of issues that are at play at this. What is it going to take? What is it going to take to help people see that and to help people see the human side of the war on drugs failure?
But you know what, Sam? This is what Slugg about. I wrote like that's what this is about. It's a, like when I said it was a human story. There's so much humanity in this book, and this humanity is coming from the men that the world call drug dealers, bank robbers, right? They produce me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm showing that, and I'm giving context to the decisions that they made. So what happens in America is like you just become a drug dealer, right? That negates father, son, brother, mentor. Like, so if you're a drug dealer, you can't be anything else. And it's funny because, and especially when it comes to us, and even in all the talks about mass incarceration, like I did this portrait exhibit called Collateral Damage. You know what I'm saying? To talk about the fallout and how it affects the family. But it's interesting because with us, that's not what people think. We're so demonized, man, to the point where you don't even see these people as people anymore. And if I don't have to see you as a person, that means I can kind of do whatever. You even I look around, in DC specifically, the native Washingtonians in a state of emergency, man.
Yes.
A state of emergency. Like it's something that's not even talked about. But part of the problem, and I say this with like all deference and all due respect, but like look at the leadership, right? You take away the mayor, right, and then 2 council members. Okay, all the rest of the DC leadership not from DC. I would like to know the agency heads in the District of Columbia, how many of them are from Washington? And you might say, well, that don't mean they can't. And I'm not saying they're not affected. Right. But at the end of the day, they don't know the nuance. They don't understand the context. So when you roll out, you got, just for an example, in DCPS, they trying to do this trauma-based approach, right? And they talk about homelessness and poverty and violence as causes of trauma. But if you from here, you know that historically this has been a place that been the nation's leader in incarceration rate. Right. So why wouldn't you identify, at least give that a shot? We've never given that a shot. The other thing is that there's never been a real work system in the District of Columbia. Finding somebody a job is not a workforce development system. Preparing them for the jobs. is a workforce development system, and we know what's going on. We seeing, you know, the mayor is really trying to focus on, you know, tech and all that. But like, so now, well, where's the technical high school? I know we got McKinley, but we need to be really start there early. Get them in coding and, you know, programming. If this is the wave of the future, if this was happening, like, we have to do that. We got to challenge hiring policies. I mean, Councilman McDuffie put forth, you know, the ban the box thing. I'm not sure how data is being collected on its effectiveness, but even at the end of the day, I think it's a good step, a great step. But that's not answering the problems, because at the end of the day, the hiring policy doesn't change. I just don't ask you early, but it will have a bearing on if you work here.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? So if your policy is I don't hire felons, then your policy is I don't hire felons. Right. No matter if we find that out day one or day number 10 in the job process. You know what I'm saying? So, definitely. Yeah, man, I try to be as honest as possible. I try to bring a perspective that is genuine. I'm not out for anything. I don't, you know what I'm saying?
We definitely see that. Before we wrap up the interview, and once again, Mr. Lewis, I thank you for being so candid and just delving into your life experiences on camera, pretty much. My last question to you is, you know, seeing as you were born and raised in DC and you're working to improve DC, if you had a magic wand, what would the quintessential DC look like to you?
A place that's extremely diverse, a place that is accepting of all people, and a place where opportunity is readily available for those that are willing to do what it takes to get it, to get those opportunities. We in a place where there's dialogue. Right now, we live in a city that's literally, it's always been kind of divided, but it's like super divided. The gap between, I mean, because before, for the first time, when it was divided before, but those people that were divided were literally divided geographically. Now they live next door to each other. You know what I'm saying? So, wow, you know, I said on my blog, won't even talk to each other.
That's real. Wow.
And before, can I say one last thing?
Yes, sir.
Like, just one thing. Like, this happened like a month ago now. Maybe like 5 weeks ago now. It was on a Friday around 5 o'clock. I was coming out the door, and it's not funny, but it's just, and I heard like 20 shots, you know what I mean? And then I look out after the shots stopped. Me and my grandmother was walking out the doors. Got her kind of back, and I looked out the door. My little man, he like 24. He was laying on the ground. He got shot in the head. You know, I ran out there, whatever, held his hand, talked to him, trying to keep him up. He didn't die, thank God. He got paralyzed on the left side. You know, I held him, was out there with him till I had a fly suit on too. I was mad, like, anyway. But before the paramedics came. So long story short, we got this listserv, this thing, Truxton Circle something, right? And I'm on it. You know, I try to stay plugged in. And you know, I waited like 2 days, and ain't nobody mentioned that this young man got shot in his head. Right? So when I talk about that divide, because see, that young man not attached to anybody that's on that listserv.
Right.
And when something happened to us, right? He must have done something. He deserved that, right? Like and unfortunately, God rest the dead, but a white guy got killed around my way on the 5th, and you know, on NBC4, you know, they said, you know, he was from Alexandria, 52 years old, had a wife, kids, and all that. And he came into DC to buy crabs and fireworks, but I don't see no crabs or fireworks stands around my way. And so I'm not saying that he definitely shouldn't have lost his life. Nobody should lose their life. But just don't over victimize. Like how he find himself on North Capitol, New York Avenue, if he was looking for fireworks and crabs. But if that was if that's the way that they tell the story, whenever somebody else is victimized, it's like they're the victims and the animals got them. But when we get victimized or hurt, it's like, oh, whatever.
Right.
I mean, I'm tired. I'm a little tired of that, and ain't enough people speaking up about that. And so when I'm saying all that to say this, my quintessential DC would be that every life would be equally as valuable.
Mr. Tony Lewis Jr., everyone. Sons of Life, DC or Nothing. You purchased this book on July 31st. Don't get the bootleg. Don't Xerox it, anything like that. Your local library.
Oh yeah, SluggLife.com. You can get the hard copy. Ebook is available now. Kindle, iBooks. Book 15 on SluggLife.com. $10 on Amazon and iBooks. It'll be on iBooks. You can download it tonight at 12 and all that.
Oh wow. Man, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.